Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Molecular Biotechnology channel. You might have heard in the news that there's a lot of hype about researchers in the University of Minnesota who allegedly created cells from scratch. This is so-called SpudCell, and so this is a new step in what is known as synthetic biology. And so we're going to look at what is a spud cell and answer the question, is this spud cell really a cell? So as a bit of introduction, up until this point, synthetic biology is the area where they try to synthesize actual cells and actual life. Until now, they've attempted to create life by breaking down existing cells and then building them back up. But this really isn't the way forward because they're not actually creating life, they're just breaking something down and building it back up. In 2016, Hutchison et al. Created Mycoplasma laboratorium, a minimal cell with a genome of 531 megabase pairs and 473 genes, outdoing the record holder until then, which is a microbe known as Mycoplasma genitalium, an organism from the same genus, which had a slightly larger genome with a slightly larger number of genes. And so what they did in this experiment was that they removed genes from Mycoplasma laboratorium, or that is from genitalium, in order to get Mycoplasma laboratorium. And again, this isn't the real thing. What researchers really need to do is to take very simple chemicals, very basic building blocks, and then from them they have to build up actual living cells. These are simple chemicals like sugars, lipids, nucleotides, or amino acids, or perhaps even more simple chemicals than these. And so now, in 2026, not so long ago, the so-called spud cell is the latest result in the area of synthetic biology, which was created by researchers in the Adamala lab at the University of Minnesota. So let's take a look at this alleged spud cell. So on the left we have Mycoplasma laboratorium, and it looks like pretty much like a microorganism. Um, but on the right we have spud cell, which is, as you can see, it's a lot more simple, a lot less complex in its shape and in its constitution. It's basically it's like a liposome with a simple lipid bilayer, and so compared to mycoplasma, spud cell is a lot more simple in composition. So what does a spud cell really look like? Is spud cell really a cell? There's been a lot of media hype over the spud cell, maybe much more than what the researchers want to admit. The authors of the paper are much more cautious than journalists, than the secular media would want to let on. And in fact, I think the main researcher is actually doesn't really want to go so far as to call spud cell an actually living cell. So we haven't gotten there, not just yet. This spud cell has an irregular 90 kilobase pair genome of 8 plasmids. So the genome itself is actually quite irregular compared to a single circular chromosome in bacterial cells. So this is something unusual to find in a cell. The authors even admit that complete metabolic independence will require a larger genome. So here they're saying that this cell is not capable of independent metabolic life, and so you need something more to actually create a cell from very simple precursors. It also has has a simplistic membrane protein for the entry of food and the exit of waste materials. And what's most important is that the spud cell is very dependent on feeder liposomes. Liposomes are these globular type. They have a lipid membrane, and they contain components that the researchers used to merge with a cell to keep it alive, which was used actually very much in excess of cells. They used much more feeder liposomes than the actual cells that they were trying to build up. And so even if the spud cell is really a cell, it's pretty much on life support. Maybe even on, it's an even in hospice, you could say. So spud cell receives ribosomes only from the outside, which are found in these feeder liposomes. Now, ribosomes, they're needed for protein production, and you can't just bring them in from outside. The cell has to have them inherently inside its plasma membrane. It's an absolute necessity for independent life. It also has no proteins that form a mitotic ring for cell division. It hasn't really been observed to undergo a cell cycle with all four phases of synthesizing its DNA and then dividing. Doesn't have this mitotic ring which splits the cell in half. So as you can see that in eukaryotes and also in prokaryotes, we have ribosomes. Basically, every single cell type has ribosomes. Ribosomes are the little factory machines that produce proteins which actually fulfill roles in the cell. A spud cell without initially having ribosomes is very much like a factory without machines inside. It's like empty without any machines to produce anything meaningful. So there's a very big fault of the spud cell. So here's another image from the publication. Here we have these feeder liposomes that they have to pack with all sorts of stuff like ribosomes and other things, which they will merge with the spud cell to keep it alive and to sort of make it as if it has a semblance of biological life. But the basic question is: spud cell really a cell? Spud cell can divide only 5 times, compared to the so-called Hayflick limit of 40 to 60 times for human fetal cells. Hayflick was a researcher. He found that human fetal cells can divide 40 to 60 times, but showing that there's a pretty big difference between spud cell and regular cells. Authors, they say that after 5 generations, we perform single-cell quantification of all plasmids from the net 90 kilobase per genome. 30% of all analyzed cells contain the complete genome, all 7 plasmids. Now this is what, and it's 7 plasmids, not 8. Now this is very telling because what the researchers are admitting is that after each cell cycle, the cell bleeds DNA. It loses part of the genome. Now, if evolutionists would want to use spud cell as a model for evolution, it's a very, very poor model because evolution needs gain of genetic information. Here, these cells are bleeding information. Only 30% after only 5 generations, only 30% of all analyzed cells contain a complete genome. This is a very, very poor performance. No cytoskeleton exists for the cell. In order for the cell to move like amoeba or irregular cell needs a cytoskeleton. The first cell division only occurs after an external mechanical insult. So left to itself, spud cell could not even begin to divide, which is a very fundamental characteristic of cells. The number of cell divisions could have been higher before the flood, not just 40 to 60 when humans lived longer. Cell division, some researchers find may correlate with telomere length. The telomere is a very repetitive segment at the very end, at the very tip of the chromosomes. And so some researchers find that the telomere length can possibly correlate with the number of cell divisions that a cell undergoes. What does this mean for the creation versus evolution debate? There is more hype than reality. Spud cell is not truly a cell, even according to the researchers who designed spud cell. Spud cell was designed, showing that that there's a lot of design going into its creation. So it's not evolution via simple chemicals. Rudolf Virchow, a cell biologist from the 19th century, coined the phrase omnis cellula et cellula, meaning that all cells come from cells. And as we see, that spud cell is pretty much of a failure of trying to replicate the production of cells. And so what this means is that cells do not come from abiotic life. Only life comes from previous life. Life does not come from non-life. So this means that the whole narrative of a Big Bang followed by chemical evolution followed by cellular evolution is moot. It doesn't exist. And so evolutionists, they say that selection, uh, first of all, we know that selection only works on living organisms, and so therefore selection cannot create living things. And so evolutionists are in very big contradiction because evolutionists are trying to say that there was like a replicator world before cellular life, and there were these molecules they were replicating. They're not quite alive, but they're replicating, and then natural selection acts on these replicating molecules. There is no evidence whatsoever for uh, replicator world. It's a fantasy. It's an evolutionary myth. Real cells are much more complex than SpudCell, and they need over at least 1,300 genes for the cell to exist independently. So there are cells which are parasites. They may have a smaller number of genes, but they're parasites because they depend on the host cell to have their own genes to produce nutrients that the parasitic cell just uses up. So the parasite cell can afford to lose their genes for, let's say, some sort of sugar some sort of gene which produces sugars, because this sugar is produced and supplied by the host. So, according to my calculations, 1,300 genes is what is absolutely necessary for cells to exist independently and not as parasites. Now, is synthetic biology ethical? Um, I believe that if we're trying to synthesize cells, we're trying to play God who calls all beings into existence. Because if we can create cells, then we can create embryos, we can create other organisms, and so we're trying to play God into controlling uh, what kind of organism becomes alive. And so we're trying to control the existence of life by trying to synthesize cells. I think that we're really trying to play God in this situation. Job 14 verse 5 says, "Since his days are determined, the number of his months is with you. You have appointed his limits so that he cannot pass." So all of our days are determined by God. God alone sovereignly decrees when we're born and when we die. This decision is not up to the creation. Hebrews 9:27, and as it is appointed for men to die once, but after this a judgment. So the day that we die, that is appointed, that is in God's hands. All events are in God's hands, who is sovereign over all things. Lastly, Psalm 139 verse 16, "Your eyes saw my substance being yet unformed, and in your book they all were written. The days fashioned for me, when as yet there were none of them." So our days are all written down in the book of God, who determines all things. And so uh, God determines life. God determines when we're born, when we pass from this life. He even gives us good deeds in which we shall walk, according to Ephesians 2. And so um, trying to play God by synthesizing life, I think, is not ethical. So anyway, thank you very much for listening, and God bless you all.